Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 14th, 2023 briefing for Forsyth County Commissioners. This is our second briefing for the meeting that will take place September 21st, next Thursday. We actually have several discussion items before we actually go over, actually brief the items for the agenda. And I am going to I'm looking at sort of numbers of folks. I think I will start with Joshua Swift from the Health Department. He's kind of typically been our first person. He's going to give us a COVID-19 update. Commissioners asked for that the last time we met, particularly with the numbers that we're reading about across the country and around, and he's going to give us a report on that first. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. If you'll give me 1 second to pull this up. Ashley, or would you mind pulling it up for me, or? So, I'm out of practice. Okay, let's click it. Okay, so good afternoon. So a brief overview. I have about 6 or 7 slides. So the first thing I wanted to show was our wastewater data. Basically, we have roughly 10% of the tools at our disposal for monitoring COVID. Since the public health emergency ended in May, we don't get the data for the number of tests positive. Frankly, a lot of it's because people are testing positive with at-home test kits. The state doesn't send us the data on a weekly basis that I was getting for 3 years. The biggest thing we have, or best thing we have, is our wastewater monitoring. And you can see this is updated every Wednesday. It's on the state's page. Winston-Salem is one of the municipalities across the state that has wastewater data. And you can see from this that our numbers are up. We average 78 million viral gene copies per person. As of 9/6, we were at 44 million back in Omicron, back in January of 2022. So the numbers are have went up. You'll see, though, we're not seeing the severity. We are seeing a gentle uptick in hospital cases, but we're not seeing the severe cases that we were in the past. So this next is about variants that are circulating. You can see that it's really no dominant variant at this time. You can see EG5 is 16% of variant circulating, 15% are XBB.1.5, descended from Omicron. Then you can see FL.1.5.1 is 11.5%, and BA2.86 is not detected. The thing I will note, this is based on regional data from the CDC, regional as in the southeastern United States. So a whole swath from along the Gulf Coast and up through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. So like I said, we don't have those tools that we used to have where we could get data specific to Forsyth County or North Carolina.
Can I interrupt you before you leave this slide?
Yes, sir.
The wastewater treatment that we do, does it actually show the particular variants it's coming from? It doesn't. No. What does it tell you?
It shows those it shows the gene copies, basically the amount of COVID in the water. Okay. And that is and in the past, when we had those number of case data, when you looked at the website, it showed there was two graphs. One showed this right you're seeing right here with the cases, and then the wastewater, and the next one showed the cases, and they pretty much mirrored each other. But that, as of May, we don't get that information anymore. Yes, sir.
May I? Could you go to the next slide, please? The variants. The newly approved vaccine combination that is in process of being released. Which, if any of these variants, is it prepared to target?
Yeah. So It's a great question. I have, that's in 2 slides.
Okay, that's right, yes.
That will be right there. So make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. COVID testing, we do have the at-home test kits. They're distributed at the 10 library locations, the health department, our front desk, and our kiosk. We're seeing more movement of those. It's also here at the government center. Last spring, we got over 50,000 test kits, and we have now around 30 to 25,000 of those test kits left. So they are moving. We're taking them out to events in the community, and we have asked for more from our state supply. They've offered it. We're going to get more. And we're encouraging individuals right now, and I'll try to bring it up. There's actually a website the CDC has where if you test positive or you're exposed to someone with COVID, you can Google. The best way is for someone to Google CDC COVID calculator, and they can know what to do, what precautions they should take for themselves. So that's something we are encouraging persons to do, because we get lots of questions about, should I mask at this time? Should I isolate? And that's the best place for go, because it depends on your situation, your age, if you're immune compromised, and such. COVID hospitalizations, gotten this data updated today from both hospital systems. This is, just to be clear, and we tried to say this before when I gave the regular updates, this is the number of persons hospitalized with COVID in our hospitals in Forsyth County, but this doesn't mean they're residents of Forsyth County. So this could be someone from another county here that's hospitalized. Total hospitalized is 38. Last week it was 30. I have been talking with Dr. Ohl. We had actually a meeting last week, just a check-in with Atrium and Novant. We have another one tomorrow just to see how things are going as we also anticipate the vaccine. And what they're seeing is, even though they have seen a slight uptick, they're not seeing the severity of cases as far as people in the ICU and their length of stay. Last year, this time, we did have 21 persons in Forsyth County with hospitalizations, looking back. Updated vaccine, to your question, Commissioner Vesey. First of all, this is FDA and CDC approved. The updated Moderna and Pfizer vaccine is recommended for everyone 6 months and up. Encouraging now, there's about a 2 to 3 month wait after infection before receiving the vaccine. And the COVID and flu vaccine can be given at the same time. We know from last fall with the booster rollout, across the nation, around 20% of persons got the fall booster. We're anticipating a bigger uptake this year of about 30 or 40%. Got that number from talking with Dr. Ohl. The updated vaccine, to answer your question, is better able to fight off the latest variants. The updated vaccine is monovalent, so it's one strain. It's designed to protect against the XBB-1-5 variant. This is the descendant of Omicron, and it also offers protection against EG5 and the upcoming BA2-86.
Go back to the
Sure.
slide that shows.
Yeah.
Now, the list again?
So the updated vaccine is monovalent, but it's designed to protect against XBB-1-5, that's the descendant of Omicron, and offer protection against EG5 and BA2-86, .86. So the original strain is not in the vaccine because really, we've moved on from that. And I think the biggest thing, the takeaway is COVID-19, it continues to evolve, and so the vaccine is evolving as well. And you see that with flu every year where there's different strains in the flu vaccine. So, and I think the takeaway that we're trying to speak to, and I literally just have one more slide about our availability of the vaccine, is encouraging persons to take the vaccine. Now we're in such a different place than we were 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago when the vaccine was rolling out. 95% of the population has either had COVID or been vaccinated or both. So we have a built-up immunity. But the biggest thing is just to prevent that disruption of your life. If you have COVID, I've talked to people that have recently got COVID and just, they either felt really bad, they weren't able to go on a certain trip or be around others, and especially as we enter cold and flu season. So the last thing I'll go back to, this is my final slide, is the vaccine availability. So we have pre-ordered the vaccine. We're unsure of exactly when it will arrive, but the availability in the community, CVS and Walgreens are supposed to have vaccine available for uninsured and underinsured, working with the federal government to have a bridge access program for persons where they can get that vaccine. We know from talking with Atrium and Novant, they will be offering it at certain providers, most likely larger practices. And then the Department of Public Health, we will have it as well. We're going to be using COVID dollars to purchase COVID vaccine and offer it in tandem with flu vaccine this fall for walk-in appointments. So I know that's a lot, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did you bring any vaccine with you?
Yeah, I do not have it yet. We will have it soon, but that would have, don't have it yet.
One brief follow-up question for the Department of Public Health vaccinations. I understand we're using federal money to subsidize the purchase. If someone comes to get the vaccines at the Department of Public Health and they have insurance that covers it, will the county is the county in a position to accept that insurance to underwrite the costs?
No, sir. We were going to treat it the same way that the commissioners, ever since I've been here and before, have used county dollars to buy the flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Every year we've done that, and we've offered the flu vaccine to the community at no cost. And these are federal dollars, COVID dollars, that we're using to purchase the COVID vaccine. And so, one, we can't charge for it just because we can't, since we're receiving federal funds. And we'll be able to offer it whether you're uninsured or insured.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions for Joshua? Thanks for that report. It's very,
Yes,
very
sir.
helpful. I assume that F.1 point, whatever it is, the one that's not covered in this new vaccine, that's the old one it's showing up in wastewater at 11.5%.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about, the FL?
Yeah, just go to your third slide. I think
I
it
may
is.
have,
You can do it right there. You can just click on it. Actually, I think it's slide 4 on the left. Slide 4 on the left. Nope. Yeah. Well,
yes,
yeah.
sir.
You see that FL.1.5.1?
Yes,
That's the one that's not covered by the new vaccine.
yeah, currently.
But yet in the region, it's circulating at the rate of 11.5%.
Yeah.
It just strikes me. Is that the old one? Is that the original? I don't know what.
No, that is not. So when you look at that page, there are literally 10 to 15 variants that are circulating at any one time. And the interesting thing is to look by month, and they will start to grow or decrease. And that's just how these work, that one variant will take over another variant. And then and there's actually like I said, a tree that shows us how the variants have spun off since the original variant. It's quite amazing.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you. And I appreciate the commissioner support and the staff. Thank you.
We appreciate what you all do. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Jackie Copeland's here from Partners, and this is his second trip because we didn't get to him in our normal or morning briefing session, and he's with Partners, and we appreciate your quarterly update. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you. Ashley is coming to be my savior again, so we can get a chance to talk for him. Okay. Thank you. Again, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time to come. To come in and give you an update on how things are progressing with your member care organization, Partners Health Management. First, want to just touch. As usual, we want to start focusing on what our big focus is, and that's focusing on our services to our members. So what I'll share before you today is just some typical numbers I provide, and that's the number of Medicaid members, and then at the bottom, some of the state-funded recipients. Again, state-funded recipients are those residents who are uninsured and qualify for one of the states or eligible for one of the state's funding pots that we can provide dollars for them. In regards to just looking at the numbers served, we just served over 5,100 roughly Forsyth County residents from a period of the last fiscal quarter, April to June 30th of 2023. We look at a year-to-date penetration rate for Forsyth County, and that rate's around 25.2%. Give you a little context for that, studies have shown nationally that, especially with Medicaid services, that if you can serve 1 out of 4 people who are on the Medicaid rolls, that you're engaging them in a very sufficient way. Of course, we want to make sure we serve as many people who need services as possible, but we're at 25.2%. And so to kind of give you an idea from a national perspective to a little on a statewide perspective, I wanted to share with you that penetration rate from a monthly perspective. The State Department of Health and Human Services puts out a report, the last one we received in February, comparing kind of all the LME MCOs. In that one, partners penetration rate, and this is for our entire catchment area, we had the highest penetration rate amongst our peers. And then it also talks about the lowest percentage of emergency department readmissions in the last 30-day period for that month, February, they were looking at, and we were the lowest. As you can imagine, this is something we, along with the state and others, are really focused in on, because we don't, once folks go to the emergency department, we want them to get any service that they may need in the county and not go back, because that just takes away capacity for the hospital emergency departments. And in lots of cases, as we just talked about, heard the public health director's report about COVID, it's probably the best place for them to be as an emergency room department, keep it free for those who do need that. So we're excited to continue to work on keeping partners at that level, and of course, our members in our communities. Next, the state also looks at how we follow up with 7 days after discharge from an inpatient facility. For substance use, we were number one in that particular metric. For mental health, we came in second. We typically run either in the top 2 to 3, if not lead on those. And so this particular quarter, for the second quarter, we were number 2. But just to give you a difference in how we fared, the number 1, there was a 0.09% difference between the two of us. So we were really close in that. And so we strive to continue to, again, do that follow-up piece, which I'll talk more about when we talk about initiation engagement.
Ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When you say we, you're talking about partners.
Partners.
You're not talking, the only thing you're talking on that slide about Forsyth County is the first little
Yes, sir.
arrow,
Thank you.
which
Thank you for
is
that clarification.
5,103. And I assume that the fiscal year-to-date Medicaid penetration rate of 25.2 is partners.
Yes. No, actually, that's focused on.
That is
county.
Forsyth.
That's Forsyth, yes.
And then everything else below that is a partners rate.
Yes, catchment area, all 14 counties that partners have the privilege to serve.
And what is, just off the top of your head, do you remember what the state penetration rate is on
State
Medicaid?
penetration rate, and off the top of my head, it typically ranges somewhere in that 15 to 17, 18%.
I thought we were considerably higher.
Mm-hmm.
So probably the highest of the LME MCOs.
You're exactly correct. We typically are. We're very focused on really focusing on that piece for obvious reasons. Thank you for those clarifications. Next up, the state-funded recipients. Again, we've served a little over 2,900 individuals who qualify. I have to be careful with my terminology here, is that are eligible for state-funded services.
Forsyth County.
For Forsyth County, yes, sir. Thank you for that. Next, we want to look at, again, we're sharing with you all our initiation engagement, how that goes. And so with that, you have before you the initiation rate. Again, that simply is those folks who are receive Medicaid, making sure that how quick we can get them into services after they contact us. And you'll see there within the first 14 days, because nationally that demonstrates better outcomes if you can get them into at least 2 services within the first 14 days. With that, for mental health for quarter 3, you see we're just shy of 22 percentage points there. And that is kind of stable because the last quarter I looked at for the second quarter, we're still in that 21 percentage points. So really not much change there, but much static. For substance use, we did see a drop for the third quarter. It was a little less than 4 percentage points, 3.99. Was that decrease, and we're keeping an eye on that to kind of see, because quarter 2 was very high, and so we're going to watch that trend to make sure it goes back up and just circular and process. Next, engagement. Again, that takes the next step of saying once a person says yes, I want to engage in services, that the studies say if we can have 2 or more services within the first 30 days, after initiation. Again, they have success. If you put the 2 together, the studies really look at if you can have 4 in the first 30 days, really demonstrates better outcomes long term. So on this one, for both mental health and substance use, you see we are trending up in those percentages there. Pretty significant jumps actually on both of these. If you look at mental health compared to when first quarter, we were in the single digits, and now we moved up into teens. We want to continue to address that for both of them. Typically, substance abuse, we tend to do very well as far as engaging people in substance abuse services. So we continue to work on that as you all are aware of various challenges we have now with the opioid use epidemic our country is going through. We want to make sure that in all substances, people have access to treatment when they need it. Next, I want to share with you a little bit about our tailored care management. This is, again, the services we provide to those who are probably the most vulnerable and need additional help to make sure they get the services that they need, beyond just services, but also how to address some of the social determinants of health that affects the people's ability to be able to engage in services. You'll see that about over 1,500 on our targeted care management for mental health. For IDD, there's almost 1,900 there. Individuals are being served. Next, we have our innovations waiver. These are folks who have an actual innovation waiver slot. We have a 467. And just to point out, I know the last times I came, you asked for what's the status of the 39 slots that we received in 2022. Glad to say they all have been filled now. So families have taken them. As I talked about before, tracking folks down because of the length of time that billing and registry unmet needs. We did find them, and we filled all those slots. We're excited about that.
In that process, you obviously had to update your waiting list.
Yes.
You had to, because it had not been used, and you actually found people on the waiting list that couldn't be found anymore, and so that's part of the reason it took so long. Mm-hmm. So you've assigned those. So now that you have I guess you haven't done anything with the people underneath that, but what's the number of people left on that waiting list?
It's, as I was told, 802 on that registry unmet needs. Yeah, they're waiting. We've actually increased I have 27 people we've added to that after those people said they would not like to continue on, or took an innovation slot, and then new people who want it. We're really trying to make a campaign because of the amount of time it takes for innovation slots waiver to come about, a family needs to make a decision and begin the process very quickly. And the younger, typically the better, because folks can be on this list for, I think we had someone who was close to 20 years on the list, just based off their time and the fact that we have limited funding for that, so a spot came available. What we've really encouraged them to do is get on the list earlier, and then also to seek other services, because they can receive Medicaid and state-funded services. They're available to that. We've encouraged them to seek those while they're in that pattern of waiting for innovation slot to come available. Next, my last slide for you today is I want to talk about how we're engaging the community through some of our training and other collaboration activities. This is not all the activities, just as some highlights I thought it would be interesting to share to you all. First off, since July of this year, we've added another 23 Forsyth County individuals who are certified as mental health first aiders. This adds to the 221 that we have for last fiscal year, and want to thank again the county for supporting that and commissioners for supporting that, because it's really we're helping to help people be able to help their neighbors, and this is a great tool we find out to do that with. And this commitment the county has made to do that, we're going. I was sharing with someone, other counties are now interested in that now. I think they're shall I say, envious, so they want to copy what Forsyth's done with that. So next, one training we provide is Question, Persuade, and Refer. It's a training aimed at suicide prevention. You've probably heard numbers that you heard from our Forsyth County Public Health Department and Denise Price talk about. This is a training of one training. It really helps people, kind of deputize people as they see someone who may be going through a mental health crisis, to be able to help get them to a mental health professional. So we're excited. Again, just a few months into the fiscal year, and we've got 37. We've got some other events. You see the next event down there. We talked about our community conversation about suicide. Forgive me if you've already been updated on that. We had on May 16th, had a great turnout. 75 folks participated, had a very diverse group of people, based diversity on racial demographics, socioeconomic status. It was a great turnout. So what we've decided, we've already got and planned, is for our next conversation. That's going to be next Thursday, 5:45, and we're going to do it this time at Carver High School. So we're partnering with Carver High School and 1 Forsyth County Schools, along with your Behavioral Health Department and Mental Health Association of Forsyth County. And we've also brought in other groups to kind of be supportive, have resources there. So we're starting that, and we've done some video work. I won't go into too much. I won't spoil it for anyone. But we're really trying to work on making this a true Forsyth County product and sharing it throughout our county, these various conversations. And then finally, we were asked to be on a panel with again, you'll see a trend here, with the Forsyth County Behavioral Health team to a training that was being offered as part of the Rowan Baptist Association Conference, at Emmanuel Baptist Church. We were asked to come and talk about self-care for clergy. You can imagine during these times we've had, to make sure that clergy themselves are doing things to maintain their mental health and just overall health. And we're lucky. We have Dr. Simone McIntyre. She is on staff with us, and she's also, I think she's probably ordained now as a minister. So she was able to talk to them in their language, had a great turnout there, to be able to talk to the churches in that at that conference, and kind of provide that. So we're excited and glad to do that. Also, I think Winston State University participated too, along with our portion of the presentation. So that completes my presentation or briefing for the commissioners. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Jackie?
I have a question and a comment. Great job in terms of the outcomes. That look really good. But I do still yet have some concerns in terms of the substance abuse. What are the barriers, and do you have any solutions?
Yes, substance abuse is, again, even though Partners tends to do well engaging people, we know that the need is much greater. So we're constantly trying to do that. What we're doing is doing outreach with certain groups, certain demographic groups, to try to see how we can do education and treatment with that. We had a meeting with one community agency group that represents a group of people, and we're talking with them how to do various trainings and then also get their feedback of how to best to serve their community. And they're going to give us input on that with providers. And so we're looking forward to that. We're also looking at trying to stabilize our provider network. I should say expand our provider network. As you've probably heard with the crunch we have with the labor market, our providers are being hit by that too. And so it's trying to get licensed clinical social workers and licensed clinical addiction specialists to try to find those. It's a very competitive market, and they're trying to work to hire those and retain them because it is so competitive. So those things, then looking at how we can roll out new services and to try to address folks with substance use. Some of the work we're doing, that the county also is doing, we do in collaboration with them around opioids. Really a lot, we've been able to take, to give some Narcan, naloxone kits to the county because the one, Denise, we've tried to partner with her and help supply the vending machine at the sheriff's office because it's, last time I talked to her, they were going through a supply pretty quickly. So we try to help out in that regard. So
Yeah,
it's a
that's what I was alluding to. I wanted to make sure that there was a collaboration there. Okay.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you for your question. Very good question.
Other questions? Jackie,
Thank you very much
for being
for your
here.
time.
We'll see you. I think our next quarterly meeting is actually in October, so we might see you again at the end of October.
All right. Thank you all again.
Our next presentation is, we invite Andra Sheets to come forward. She's going to talk about a World of Work event, and I think you have several other folks with you that you can recognize.
Afternoon, commissioners. Is it up? Oh, Ashley?
While Ashley's doing that, I also want to just recognize that our school superintendent, Thomas McManus, is here, really, I think, on behalf of supporting this effort, too. So thank you for being here.
Oh, that's impressive. Good to see it.
All right, here we go. So good afternoon. Good to see you all. Like Chairman Martin said, my name is Andrea Sheets. I do workforce development here. And I first want to introduce who we have with us today, Kim Forbes, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education with Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, Terry Cummings, Vice President of Talent and Workforce with Greater Winston-Salem Inc., and Alicia Hilton, Director of Career Readiness with Greater Winston-Salem Inc. as well. So I will turn it over to Kim to start, actually, and then I'll be back in just a bit.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to start about the WOW event that we're here to speak to you about today. We're really excited about the opportunity to offer this to every 8th grader and every 10th grader in our district. We will be exposing over 7,000 students to the careers that we are preparing for. We're working as a collaborative group with the school system, Forsyth County, Goodwill, and Forsyth Tech, as well as Greater Winston-Salem Inc. We're featuring all the career clusters, but focusing on some of these. And the afternoon of October the 17th, we will be opening it up with businesses for a community hire. Oh, did I touch something? Did I do something here? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I don't think I touched anything, did I? Okay. Thank you. So just a little bit of information about Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools CTE demographics. For this current school year, Career and Technical Education is serving 6 through 12 students, and it's over 30,000 students that are attending at least one CTE class. Our demographics, you can see, one of the positive things about our demographics is they mirror exactly our district demographics as well that are enrolled in CTE. We offer currently 46 career pathways and 14 different career clusters that focus on high skill, high wage, or in-demand careers. And part of what we're doing with the pathways is we are creating that pipeline that leads into our workforce development talent. We are proud to say that if a student completes a career and technical education pathway, then our graduation rate is 99%. So it is very important. It has a great impact. While they're in school, they can earn industry-recognized credentials, which they can take with them and at the cost from CTE. But the beautiful part about it is that our CTE employability skills that we are taught in our CTE courses align with the State Superintendent's North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate durability skills. And they're listed here, which, having said that, the State Superintendent's Office learned about the WOW, and they are actually sending representation from their office because they want to focus on Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools and our innovation, which I think that's has a positive impact across the state. Thank you.
All right. So one thing I really wanted to highlight about this event, as we've worked in planning and development, I know a large priority for this board and county leadership over the last probably 3 to 5 years has been alignment of all of our workforce development partners. And we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, all of our partners, myself, my predecessor. And this is really one of the initial big public events. You all have made your large ARPA investment, and a lot of that is being to show and be public, but this is really something that was born out of that collaboration. And everyone is working together, and this event really highlights that. The county is also taking a role. We are one of the employers. 4 of our departments will be present to hire, and our department is working with Goodwill, like Kim mentioned, but also the Department of Social Services to advertise to their clients and make sure they're aware, and some community outreach. One area that we know our workforce development system needs some work is that link between the schools and Forsyth Tech. If we can see on the last slide, 77% of graduates intended to enroll in a post-secondary education institution, and within a year, only 60% did. And so really, at this event, Forsyth Tech will be right next to the CTE clusters along with industry. And so students will really have all of the resources they need there. And so we're being really intentional to engage students as much as we can to really close those engagement gaps. And Terry Cummings and Alicia will represent the employer perspective.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Alicia Hilton. I am the Director of Career Readiness with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., as well as a former educator and principal of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. And over 31 years of experience with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, I have witnessed significant opportunity gives for our students, and it leads to great outcomes. The World of Work event will be a great impact experience for our students, and it will eliminate opportunity gaps for all 8th and 10th grade students and provide them an opportunity to attend, to learn about careers, and to meet employers as they continue to their pathway studies. So we are hoping that they continue to be able to participate in this wonderful event.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Terry Cummings. I am the Vice President of Talent and Workforce at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. And as you know, we hear from employers all the time. They're having trouble finding skilled workers and skilled applicants. So we want to take this event to allow them to make this a part of their talent strategy to get in front of the curve and really make sure that we are building a reliable talent pipeline as we move forward. And as my colleagues mentioned, we do have a hiring hiring event as well that is a part of this event. So it's a holistic opportunity for us to look at workforce development, economic development, and employer participation in the county. So we really appreciate your consideration and your continued support of workforce development.
All right, and it didn't make the slideshow, but we have it down. Ashley, how do I?
Have to shrink it.
There we go.
So, yeah, do you want me to kind of jump in here? So this project was really embedded in the ARPA grant that Greater Winston, Inc. had, and as and when the board appropriated the ARPA grant funds, which was about $2.5 million, we were actually under contract with Greater Winston for about $1,700,000 of it, and these were the approved initiatives that were approved. As staff got into it, there was a little concerns about comfort that this particular project fit into these approved initiatives. And so what we were really going to ask you today is take a look at that. If y'all are okay with this project as really part of these approved initiatives, we can go ahead and work, move forward with it. It's about, Greater Winston Inc. was going to use about $55,000 of their ARPA funds. A lot of it is really for the facility considerations to pull the event off at the Joel, because we're going to have a large number of folks here. And part of the consideration at the staff level was most of the educational initiatives, as you remember, we kind of pushed off to the schools to use for ESSER money. This one really does not fit exactly in that, but we did feel like we just wanted to verify and sort of validate with you that this fit into the second initiative, which was development of career pathways focused on but not limited to collaboratives in the target areas, and then the last one, which was unified and overarching communication campaign. That's where I think it really fit, to highlight opportunities and researchers for job seekers and employers, kind of marrying it up with students. So, if you have concerns about using the ARPA money, I think from a compliance perspective, we're good, and Gordon can correct me if I'm wrong. It was really just wanting to make sure that we were honest with how at the staff level we've been looking at this. And
What was the initial response to the initiative?
So this particular initiative, if you remember, we were actually pursuing some grant money. There was a lot of other efforts out there to provide, to figure out how to pull this one off. But there's been a lot of work that's gone on in a long time just to get this event kind of aligned and ready to go in October. So really good. And I think key into this, and that's one I actually asked Superintendent McManus to be here, is the commitment from the school system to take that many kids. Those kids are going to get here, and they're going to get here, with bus transportation. So I don't know if Ms. McManus wants to, my early conversations with her were around this is the kind of stuff. Our kids need to understand what the job market looks like moving into the future. And so if y'all are okay with using ARPA money and feeling like that, that's really the hurdle we need to get by today.
100%.
And I'll just echo what the manager said. We know that we're subject to audit on all of these contracts, and so we just want to be sure that the contract states specifically what services will be provided.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about what will happen that day? Are they all going to be together? Are they going to be roaming around the concourse talking to employers? Are they going to be
Yes.
all the above? Are they going to be there
Some
all
of
day?
all
Are
of
they
it.
going to eat lunch? I mean, what's
Yes,
happening?
so having that many students, the first day we will have 8th grade coming through, all of 8th grade. We're not from all the schools. We will have it very organized because middle school, you have to be organized to keep them moving. But we're going to be doing prior work with the students so that they're going to be doing career assessments so that they know a target of what they may be interested in that they would want to look at. So we will have a path for them as they're coming off the bus, who's going where, and when they're going to be going back on the bus, because we're going to have to do it in sessions, a morning and an afternoon. But we're also doing it in October because it'll be right before registration. so that the students can go ahead and create a plan of what they need to take in high school. So at the event and in the worlds of work, there will be high school representation, the teachers that teach the career pathways, along with some students that are currently in the pathways. Then we will have post-secondary, Forsyth Tech, Salem College, Winston-Salem State, representing as well what they offer, and then businesses connected so that they can see the continuum. Here's what I'm going to take in high school, here's what I can do post-secondary, and here's where I go with that. So that's kind of the event, but having all these pathways represented so that it can meet the students' needs. Does that?
Eighth graders coming in by themselves.
I'm sorry?
And doing an
Eighth
activity.
graders?
But then
Yes.
9 through 12 will all be
We're only
together,
doing
or-
10th grade, not 9 through 12. We're doing 8th grade, and then 10th grade will be the second day, and they will be doing the same thing, because it's a 2-day event. But the afternoon of the first is when it will be inviting our 12th graders to interview for jobs, and then open to the community as well. So,
Got it. That sounds good, and I agree with them. I think it easily fits into the second and third book.
Had
Dan.
just a question about the Coliseum facility. What are the arrangements for accessibility for students that have trouble or cannot navigate stairs?
so at each school, we have a point of contact that we'll be working with so that we can accommodate any of the needs. So that's a part of our plan. I know that we have, at the Coliseum, they have, because we're going to do around the concourse, thank you, and then down on the floor, because we're going to have vehicles in there and all kinds of hands-on activities for the students so they can be engaged. It's not just a look and keep moving. They'll actually be able to do so. We're working with them on that for those students that need accommodation.
There are
So-
elevators. That between the.
Yes,
there are
the
elevators between
elevators.
the
Oh,
concourse
absolutely.
and
Yes,
to-
yes.
And to the bottom.
Yes,
And enough to handle the crowds. Okay, thank you.
yes.
This is so exciting, and thank you all for doing this. This has been needed for a long, long time. Thank you. Money well spent.
Thank you. And Trish, thank you for coming. I did not see you out in the audience there. Oh, that's a key to focus on.
Okay.
That's a focus item. All righty. We have, we're going to talk a little bit about the survey that we have, the community survey. And I think Kim Bussey is going to come and talk with us a little bit about that. And we may have even another possible change. I know you're trying to wrap this up.
That's fine. That's
Another-
why I'm
another
here.
thought. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Kimberly Bussey, Budget Management. I'm here to come back to you with a small change in the 2023 community survey to get your feedback from today, and then hopefully be ready to move forward from here. But just as a brief review, since last we spoke, we did have a request to change, and I've, by the way, put in front of you a copy of the most recent draft, and highlighted is the question that we're looking at today. So question 8, let's see if I can. Okay, so question 8 here talks about the quality of K-12 education buildings, and the request was to maybe change that from the quality to the amount of local support. And had a conversation last week with ETC Institute, let Chairman Martin know that because this question was one of the top areas of priorities for improvement in the first survey, we just didn't want, or we wanted to make sure we didn't miss any important data comparison points with that question. So in lieu of making a change to that particular question, if you'll flip to question number 27, that's an option to add that question instead.
You're good.
And again, this gets to the amount of local funding provided, and it gives a rating system for folks to indicate their perceived satisfaction with that level of funding. So again, this is before you as a change since last you've seen the survey draft, and I'm happy to hear your feedback on this proposed question.
I actually had some, I sent this information to the other commissioners when I sent that to you. It was my request. And actually I had a conversation actually today with Commissioner Wisenhunt, which was kind of an interesting, she raised an interesting point. I'm not so sure that it's an either or, but I think that part of the question was, I think her point was, what are things that people in the community, areas like education, libraries, health department, whatever kind of that, we'd sort of need to sort out what areas would they feel comfortable, would they want to support a tax increase for? I mean, I really can, I guess this is a value system of the community. And since we have it's been a great cross-section of the community that's surveyed, and it would be nice to sort of maybe hear that question. It's just to kind of formulate that out. And certainly yield to the other commissioners on whether because I think space and time is a long survey, whether to even substitute a question like that for question 27, which is the one about how satisfied are you with the amount of local funding. We could say, what areas would you be willing to support a tax increase to improve? It's that kind of question.
And provide a list of certain.
Yeah, and then I think it could be park, you got everything from parks, this is all of our sort of service areas, or to improve, and EMS, for example. Law enforcement, the broad categories. And it could be clear sheriff's department, since that's our law enforcement, to make sure that understood. I don't know what other people think about it, it's off the top of your head, but I know her time frame is short to get this lined up, and
I like it.
It's a reasonable question to add. I'd hesitate to substitute it for 27. I think 27 is a standalone question.
Yeah, however, I'm thinking that if we incorporate the question, education would be one of the blocks, right?
It could be,
Options that they could
certainly.
choose in that question.
Well, that question specifically says, okay, what will you support a tax increase for? Right. Where someone might say, and this would be worthwhile comparison data, if they say they're not satisfied with the funding, but they wouldn't support a tax increase for it, then that it's not an entirely disconnect, because people will say, well, I think you should shift funding, but it's a separate question.
What is your drop dead date? That needs a little wordsmithing to that last question and how it might be.
Well, I think perhaps we could maybe communicate about this within the next week or so to get this.
Yeah, we need to get this survey sort of nailed down at least by next Thursday, I think.
All right, well, then we could maybe look at it next Thursday as a agenda item just to resolve, and here it is. Yeah. And we could have that sample question and we could make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, the one of the questions around a specific, especially education, is, how many citizens really understand who funds which parts of the K-12 system. Sure. And so if the question's embedded in maybe you don't ask a tax increase question, maybe you say, what services do you believe that the county should spend more money on, or and sort of.
Yeah, and you get one of those little charts that say indicate your level of satisfaction, indicate your indication of how much was it supported properly, and the last one being, would you be willing to pay more tax increases to improve it, more taxes to improve it? Right. I mean, you could probably get a comprehensive kind of question, but it takes up more space.
It does.
Yeah.
And harder to ask.
Yeah, I find very few people who really understand what our statutory responsibility is for the K-12 system, what you actually do for the K-12 system, and then what the state's responsibility is for the K-12 system. So,
But also in this survey, there are people who, I'll just use as an example, I hope it's not true, that never attend to go to a library, but yet they're going to be rating libraries, because we're asking. So we have that limitation on anything. Maybe some people never go to parks, but we're asking questions about parks. So it's it is one of those things, that, just like I think from the educational facility one, the educational buildings, holy cow, we're not asking students to rate this, we're asking some parents, and some parents may have never been in a school building, and a lot of people may think back to their school building. They rate it that way.
Right.
So there are obvious limitations to any of these kind of surveys, but I do think I know High Point does an annual survey that kind of covers a bunch of areas, and I used to do a little work with the education part, and that question about are you willing to pay more taxes to improve teacher salaries? That was like a question, for example, that kind of gets. Of course, a lot of people say they're willing to do it, and then when it became time to do it, they'd be complaining like crazy. Well, what do you mean? So surveys have their limitations. But we can work maybe on one final question that maybe gets at something like that.
Really what I wanted to do was involve all of our services rather than just education. I think there's folks out there that's far more interested in some of our other services than they are education. For instance, folks who aged out of education and their kids going to school, there may be other services that's more important to them. I'm not particularly fond of adding the tax increase question. I just want to know if there's other services that they think we need to have more support for. But if it is going to hold up the survey, we can wait till next time and ask that question. I don't want to hold up the survey.
I think we can resolve this
I
by
think we're
next
in a
week.
good place to bring you back something more comprehensive and see how close we can get.
So for me, let me just give you my feedback. I think the tax, not increase, but would you support it by taxes would be important, because our roles and responsibilities as commissioners is to evaluate the taxes. And I don't know, I would like to have at least some palette or sense of what the community wants us to have, especially in my district. So that would be helpful for me.
All right.
Thank
We'll
you
work
for the
on it. Thank you.
feedback.
Good luck.
Kim. That's good. We have two final short kind of briefing items. One is perhaps with the current budget impasse, we might want to, in the state, it's a state budget, that we might want to consider a resolution on behalf of the commissioners that to support resolving, completing the budget process. And there are a lot of things in there, and because there's some discussion about not moving forward and not having a budget and going back to a mini budget days like we had several years ago. And perhaps we could have a resolution that we could approve next Thursday, because I don't think anything's going to happen by next Thursday. And maybe, but that'd be wonderful. Then we would need the resolution. But if it hadn't happened by next Thursday, we could have a resolution to that effect. And the last thing is to talk a little bit, I believe Damon's going to talk a little bit about our I guess, ribbon cutting for the courthouse and some dates and kind of get that in our head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. So we just recently started a meeting about when would be a good time to actually have the ribbon cutting. And so the move starts on the 29th. And so we thought that before that time, on the 28th of September, that we could actually hold the ribbon cutting on a Thursday. And so we'd have it that day. And then after that, the judges conference takes place in October. So we would be ahead of that. The actual turning over of the courthouse from the Hall of Justice to officially being at the new courthouse will be October 23rd. And the move is going to take place from basically the 29th all the way through October 22nd. And so we're looking at the 28th as the time for ribbon cutting. We've tentatively shared that with the courthouse staff and courthouse elected officials. That's the date that we are looking at, that Thursday. And so we're planning on starting
How
now.
does that suit everybody here?
Well, I'll just say, all along, I thought everything was going to occur in October. I will be on vacation the 28th, but I'm sure I'm the only one that will be. And it breaks my heart not to be able to participate, but I can't change my vacation dates.
Will you be here September 30th?
I come home that day. Okay. I could do it that night.
Just, I don't feel that my presence is essential, but just to note, I will not be, doing ribbon cuttings on the 28th. Have knee replacement surgery on the 26th. So.
Well, maybe we need to, I think this has been this has been a long road. And I think perhaps all of us participating might be a good thing to try to strive for. And I'm trying to get at, and there's also some advantage in seeing furniture and so forth in the building, I guess. The question is, if you went to October 23rd, which is, I guess, is a Thursday with.
I think that's a Monday. I think that's on Monday.
Yeah, let me see. I think I'm out of town one of those days.
Yeah, so
Maybe we need to do a little more thinking on this.
Yeah, I mean, I know, Damon, you were working through the sort of the details. The idea was you get the ribbon cutting done, and then it just kind of, and then the move occurs. There will certainly be, if we did it later and kind of in the midst of the move before the courthouse actually goes live, you may be restricted a little bit about where folks go, but I think we're going to be restricted for the public event to the public areas anyway. Don't you think that's
true? And, if we cause a pause in the move, will that mess up when the courthouse would open back up?
Yeah, but the first day of the operations of the new courthouse is what date?
The Hall of Justice will be closed on the 22nd, and the new location will be the 23rd, will be at the new courthouse.
On October the 23rd.
Mm-hmm. Now, will they be actually holding court regularly? That I don't know, but the operation will be moved.
Maybe that idea, depending on where we're going, maybe it could be on the 5th, 12th, or 19th, so that it's not interrupting public business, which would be taking place that week of the 23rd, and it could be, if we're not going to go into every space. I mean, I don't know I don't know what the move stuff is, and I'm sure that's charted out somewhere. Whether there's a possibility to use that, I mean, you may be able to accommodate both things, because we're really talking about a matter of a couple hours.
Yeah, sure. Once
part of the building.
Once the move starts and they start putting their public records in there, we really don't need to go in the back of house spaces once the clerk's documents are back there and the DA's documents are in there. We don't want people traipsing throughout the back of the courthouse. It really would be just confined to the public space at that point. Now on the 28th, not that people necessarily want to go into the office spaces, that's interesting to them. Really probably the courtrooms and the other public spaces will be more what interests people than people's office space.
There will be people working, different people will be working there before it formally opens up to the public. So the clerk's staff will likely be there, through part of that. I mean, I guess if we did it on the 20th of Friday the 20th.
Yeah, I have a conflict.
Okay, or Thursday the 19th. I know we've got a county event, an awards luncheon that's set for that date.
So are we open to another date, like on a Saturday or a Sunday? Does it have to be a weekday?
It doesn't have to be, I don't guess.
This is what looks like whatever you want it to look like. We do have Attorney Gray Wilson in the audience who can.
If we pushed it to somewhere near October 31st, can you imagine what the Winston-Salem Journal could do on a day of trick-or-treat? And I'm not saying they would do that, but somebody would think of that.
But we probably can resolve this not during, I know we have a zillion items to brief today. Maybe we can, well, I guess I'll offer one other thing. Commissioner Wizenhut was obviously, what if we did it next Thursday?
That
Not
would be
enough time to
fast.
send out an invitation to advertise?
I don't think we can. Yeah, there's so much interest in getting some statewide officials here and lots of folks. We're pushed up with the 20.
Between invitations and tents and
Yeah,
chairs and
yeah.
the
We were-
contractor and the architect getting here.
Yeah, scrap that then. I'll ask one final question. What about take Commissioner McDaniel's point, what about a Saturday or Sunday? I mean, a Sunday afternoon's a possibility. I mean, that's kind of a more leisurely, or Saturday's a little more competitive with other, events. But what about a 3 o'clock afternoon on a Sunday kind of
It's
thing?
the 30th.
We'll go back and talk and make it work. The 30th is what the board would like to do.
Actually, I'm not sure I can make the 30th.
Opening on the 24th.
I mean, that's why I said this is a little,
Negative vibes on the Sunday
we've got some problematic
I
issues
won't be
here.
back till
Is it 30th Saturday or
before that.
Sunday?
it's a Sunday.
But it could be any, we could have more
Sunday?
time, it could be any, if we could,
Sunday is the 1st.
30th.
October 1st.
but he's just gonna be out of surgery
Oh,
for
it's a
4,
Saturday.
5, 6 days then, after that.
Y'all
It'd have to be
can cut that
October
ribbon without me
1st.
there. I'm not worried about that.
Oh, you've got to be.
But I was looking at the Sundays in October.
October 1st.
Yeah, that'd be
Huh?
great.
Would the
We gotta
board like
work.
to kind of pull themselves and
No,
let us know, and we
that
will
does
work
not-
around
that's what I'm
what
gonna
time
do.
you want us to do it?
I'm gonna be gone October 1st, the first.
Okay.
We'll work on it, but is there
All
any
right.
objection to Sundays?
No objection to Sundays.
No.
For the month
You're in
of Oc-
objection to
for the
Sundays,
month
so
of
that's,
October.
that's, we'll work on it.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good.
Sorry we
You
spent that
okay
time.
on Sunday?
All right, now we're ready to take.
Are we ready?
Turn the
Well, I hate
meeting
to
over.
ask, but do we need a short recess or anything? Everybody ready to go?
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, very good. All right. So we do have the items for consideration for the September 21st meeting, and we'll get on through these. The first, a couple of public hearings. The first one is a public hearing on the zoning petition. It is F-1632, and I will turn it over to Chris Murphy.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is zoning case F-1632. It's a request of Tia Jeanette Jackson and Lamika Lyles for a 13.04 acre parcel located northeast of Old Hollow Road between Box Mountain Road and Phelps Drive. The request is special use rezoning from RS40 to RS20S. This is a subject property shown on the countywide growth management area plan map. You'll notice that it is in GMA 5. It's directly adjacent to GMA 4, which is across on the south side of Old Hollow Road, and it's a little bit to the east of GMA 3. So all three of these growth management areas kind of coalesce in this area, but this is in the rural policy area, GMA 5. Here's the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, on the north side of 66 Old Hollow Road. Here's the subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. It is a wooded lot adjacent to some large lot development or developed parcels. This is the subject property shown in the rural area on that North Rural Policy Guide. Again, it does recommend that these areas retain large lot zoning. In this case, the request is to go from RS40 to RS20, but the request keeps the density somewhat similar to the underlying RS40. Under the RS40 zoning, you could realize 14 lots. I believe with this RS20S request, they are asking for 15 lots. The rationale behind and the reasoning why they are asking for this rezoning is dealing with lot width. In order to get these lots in, they need to go with a lesser lot width because of the way that the road is being the street connection is being made to Old Hollow Road.
Before you leave that map.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask you one question. Just to the north of the case F-1632, what looks like a subdivision, is that a subdivision? Because I read in the report that there were some subdivisions that had not been built out in that area. Is that one of them, the one to the north?
The one to the north is an existing subdivision. It has been constructed. But it was probably, I have not looked. I don't know what it's kind of off of this map. It's probably RS30 or RS40 subdivision, but it probably meets the requirements of the it's probably acre lot size would be my guess.
Didn't look like it. Oh, well, because I can picture sort of the 15 drawn in there. Yeah, I guess they could be.
Well,
maybe they could be.
In context, the parcel that's just to the south of this, of the subject property, I want to say is 9 or 10 acres in size. So it's,
yeah, I hear you. While I've got you stopped, I was going to ask you one other thing. As the next plan, which is the 2045 plan, which is in the works now, what do you contemplate happening to the rural growth management areas? Obviously, are going to have to be smaller, I think. I mean, one would clearly think that's the future. And I would think this is clearly going to be right in it.
it really depends. I think what we'll have to do is look at it in the context of the Beltway, look at it in the context of the basin study that's being contemplated, by the Utilities Commission, they're doing their own thing. They're also doing something in connection with economic development and us. It also might mean for the areas that currently have sewer having to grow smarter and having to grow more dense and having to allow for what's called missing middle housing and opportunities to have attached products in areas that currently only have single family. And again, this is big picture wise, but again, we have a housing shortage. We are one of the most populated counties in the state, in the top 10. We're in the bottom 10 as far as size. We're running out of land. So it's certainly going to be a key component of Forward 2045. But I don't have the answers today because we're still
I didn't mean to get us sidetracked.
Still seeking that input. This is looking northeast at the subject property from Old Hollow Road. This is looking towards the northwest along Old Hollow Road. The subject property is to the right. This is in the curve on Old Hollow. This is looking southeast along Old Hollow Road. The subject property is to the left. I do point out those two images because one of the opponents to this did mention the site distance issues with Old Hollow Road. Of course, keep in mind the NCDOT has to issue driveway permits and allow for street connections. They have to ensure that they're safe. But in this instance, being on the outside of that curve, it's preferable than being on the inside. You do have site distance both if you look at this to the west and to the east, given the location of where the driveway will be located. This is looking southwest across from the subject property across Old Hollow Road. This is looking west across from the subject property. This is the site plan. Again, keep in mind that the total number of lots under existing zoning, you can realize 14 lots. They're asking for RS20S for 15, but primarily due to the lot size limitations and the lot width limitations of how this property is configured. These are the lots that are under 30,000 square feet. So then the balance of those are over 40,000. In summary, this request is inconsistent with the recommendations of the Northeast Rural Study Area and Legacy 2030, again, because of an intensification of the zoning district. Again, you could argue that with the special use district plan that they are putting forth a plan that really doesn't intensify the actual what's on the ground, but it's going to an intensification of the zoning district. And I think that's why the planning board did recommend approval of this, because it is tied to a site-specific plan. Legacy generally does recommend preserving the rural character of GMA 5 and recommends against intensifying residential zoning districts to allow for additional density. This request represents an encroachment of higher intensity single-family zoning, going from RS40 to RS20 in GMA 5, and could promote further land use intensification outside of the serviceable land area. However, given the location on the edge of GMAs 3, 4, and 5, and the need for housing, the proposal could be deemed appropriate with appropriate densities, with the proposed densities and the development pattern of the special use district plan. This was heard by the Planning Board at their August 10th, 2023 public hearing. There were 2 speakers in opposition that were present at the meeting. The opposition raised concerns related to the precedent, if this were approved, to the GMA considerations, traffic safety, the size and style of homes, the potential loss of wildlife, and potential impacts to property values. Following the public hearing and discussion, the Planning Board did vote 8-1 to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions?
Will the state require a turn lane here? And the turn lane would, I think, would be headed to southeast if one was going to be in place. Because that's where it'd back the traffic up, and it's not, it won't create a large amount of traffic, but 66 has a lot of traffic on it. And
to answer your question, I don't know off the top of my head. Given that it's 15 lots, that's generally only going to generate about 135 trips per day. It probably doesn't meet a threshold for turn lanes, but I'll look and see what the interdepartmental comments say from NCDOT and whether or not it does allude to that.
And there are a bunch of improvements planned.
It says for any traffic volume over 4,000 vehicles per day, turn lanes may be required. And again, I think that's referring to Old Hollow in and of itself. I'm sure there's more than 4,000 trips a day. I don't know that this isn't going to generate that many trips, but I think it's basically putting them on notice that they may be responsible for turn lanes, but that decision is made at the time of the issuance of the driveway permit.
well, at least they should know that it's a possibility. But these, even developments that may not create a lot of traffic themselves on a roadway like 66, you got an awful lot of traffic. And on some secondary roads, you got an awful lot of traffic. And that just, well, one like this wouldn't have to be as long, as much stacking space as some, but then that's, well, as you pointed out, being on the north side, the sight distance is better, and that's right there in the curve, just going northwest before you get to Box Mountain. Is that
Correct.
right?
The improvements on Old Holler don't extend out that far because there's a pretty big project.
Correct. Yeah, this is far to the
west.
Yes.
I had a question. The planning board's reasoning here. The area plan seems to come down very squarely against this kind of intensification in that planning area. What's different about this situation than any other piece of property that's just beyond the divider between a clearly and strongly recommended rural character area and an area that's more suitable for denser development? I mean, you could use the same logic to one project at a time, march the rural designated area out of existence to the county line.
You know, staff recommended denial, and we'd recommend denial based on the fact, again, what you're saying, because it's in the rural policy area, and this is an intensification of the zoning going from RS40 to RS20. And we felt like, from a staff perspective, we needed to recognize those boundaries that were in place and stick to the plan. But again, arguing the other side of that, the planning board felt that because, if this were a general use request, RS40 to RS20, you essentially could double the density. And again, it's kind of the domino effect. The planning board felt that because this was an RS20S with a site-specific development plan that limited it to the plan as shown, which had one additional lot than the underlying zoning would allow, that they felt like that this was something that they felt like, even though it's going to 20 versus 40, that was more for a lot width issue, and the overall density was consistent with what could be done under RS40.
I hear that, but I also, recognize that any given lot in rolling terrain, like composes most of our county, you're going to be always dealing with terrain issues for development and limitations in most situations. I don't see anything unique about this. Just thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, do you think that a portion of this is going to be affordable housing?
There has been no indication that that is the case. There was, the two folks that showed up in opposition mentioned that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to speculate as to why they mentioned that, because nothing had been mentioned to that. They did talk about affordable housing as a concern. They also talked about they didn't like the fact that these could be what are called barn dominiums, which again is a style of a house that is, has a more of a prominence of probably a barn or garage with living quarters associated with it. Again, from a zoning and land use perspective, we don't get into what the building looks like. As long as it meets North Carolina State Building Code, that's what we're going to care about. But I haven't heard of anything that these are going to be either capital A affordable or even little a affordable. I mean, I think they're going to be market rate homes.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Wizenhut, I'll add to that it is not something that the board should consider whether it's affordable housing or not. To an earlier question from Chair Martin, that street to, I believe, the north does have a number of manufactured homes on it.
Well, is one additional lot, is it one or two that is gained in the potential zoning change as it currently is? Or is it that is something about the configuration of the property that they want in our lot?
It's both. It is under the existing RS40 zoning, they can have 14 lots. Under this proposed RS20 zoning, they're proposing 15 lots. So they're getting one additional lot. But in addition to that, the RS20 zoning allows narrower lot widths. And they also have 4. They also have 6 lots that are less than 40,000 square feet in size. So they need the RS20 due to lot configuration, but their RS20 request is only adding one additional lot, if that makes sense.
The lots can be down to 100 feet wide, is that right?
I don't have it in front of me, but I know that I think AG is 100. I think it may allow down to 75-foot width in RS20. AG is 150, RS40 is 100. I believe RS20 allows 75-foot lot width. But I can answer. I'll have you an answer to that before next meeting.
Given the physical limitations of the site and where they need to put the road, if they had to meet all the configuration requirements for the larger size lots, how many lots could they actually get on this space?
I would have to defer to Paul Stimson, who will be here. I don't know if he's here today or not. He may be able to answer that today. I know he can answer it next week. My speculation is, as opposed to 15 lots, they would probably be down. They would probably lose at least 2 or 3 lots, so down to 12, perhaps even as far, probably maybe even down to 11. But he can answer that question.
Thank you.
Other questions for Chris?
All right, thank you.
All righty. Very good. Agenda item 2 is a public hearing to consider the expenditure of county general funds for an economic development project and authorizing an agreement with Purple Crow Investments LLC. You got an associated resolution, and Asani Mitchell from Community and Economic Development Department will review this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll be very brief. This is a continuation. I briefed this about 2 weeks ago. I'll do a full presentation at the public hearing in 2 weeks. But in short, this is a proposed economic development incentive project for a local Hispanic food distributor. And the company's name has already been released to the public, so it is Purple Crow. Just in short, the project details, this is a $50 million capital investment. The company proposes $31 million in real property and $19 million in machinery and equipment. They are proposing 199 full-time jobs over a period of 5 years, and with an average salary of $72,635 per year. The county's incentive package will be $711,927, which is 50% of the tax increase, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Once again, we'll give the full project details at the public hearing.
Questions for Hassani?
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Just be here next week. You said in 2 weeks, so next week. Yeah, all right, great. All right, we have several special resolutions. Item 3 is a resolution recognizing September 23 as National Infant Mortality Awareness Month in support of the 12th Annual Walk a Mile to Save Our Babies, which we did this week? Last week, yeah. And so Sharita Sutton will be here next Thursday to accept that. I'll jump over to item 5, which is a resolution recognizing September 2023 as National Preparedness Month. August Vernon with our Emergency Management Division will be here to review that, and we are going to find ourselves here in our hurricane season here before too long. And then I'll jump back to item 4 because we do have a presentation on that, and that is a resolution ratifying the amended Forsyth County pay plan, and Shannon Hutchins is going to come up and talk about the work that, I'll leave it up to her. So I think you're going to pull up a PowerPoint.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Chantel, do you know where it is?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So today I'm going to revisit the recent law enforcement and detention salary study and provide the board with some implementation cost and options. So as a recap, during the fiscal year 2024 budget process, the board approved a special compensation study for law enforcement and detention positions as a result of recent hiring rate increases in the comparable market. PTRC completed the study in early August, and the data showed that jurisdictions throughout the state had made extremely aggressive increases to pay for law enforcement. So based on the data, PTRC recommended increases to hiring rates for deputy and detention officer. Job classifications within the law enforcement and detention series were recommended for pay grade increases as a result of the study and through an analysis of internal equity. The annualized cost to implement the pay plan changes, including fringe and vacancies for the positions, equals $3.8 million. So this slide is a snapshot of the proposed changes for the law enforcement series. For instance, here you can see that Deputy Sheriff 1 will increase by 3 pay grades, and that would move the base hiring salary from $44,500 to $51,500. Just like the previous slide, this slide shows a snapshot of the detention series and the pay grade changes there. So Detention Officer 1 would increase by 2 pay grades, moving the base hiring salary from $44,500 to $49,000. So as I mentioned previously, the annualized cost to implement equals $3.8 million. This cost includes field and vacant positions. It also includes fringe, deferred compensation, and separation allowance if applicable.
Can I interrupt you, Shannon?
Yes.
On the attachment that we received for this, it says 2.9, not 3.8.
That's right. So this week, actually 2 days ago, we discovered a reporting issue where there were positions that were omitted from the report. So after we Budget and I got together and looked through that, there was about $1 million difference.
That's a big difference.
That's a big difference.
So how many employees did you not include, did you leave out? Holy cow.
So it was a reporting issue, and there was between 30 and 40 positions.
What do you mean by reporting issue?
So when we look at the compensation and do the calculations, we have to pull down active employees, vacancies, and then there's some things that Kyle has to pull on his side too from a budget perspective, and we have to marry them up. So what comes out of the system, we have a new system. Sometimes it's not always easy to get in the new system. We're still developing reports. So MIS had to go in and run some queries. And then we discovered it this week that we were about 40 positions.
And while I've got you interrupted, but by next week, could you tell us how many current vacancies there are in all of these positions total?
Yeah, so countywide, we have 476 total vacancies. That's full-time and part-time.
I just want to know for this group.
So for detention, there's 111, and for law enforcement, 28.
And I'll say a few comments about just the system issues that are there. So, the accounting side's fully implemented, although we're still working through kind of stability of that system. The HRIS piece of it is sort of connected in. The budget piece we are actively working on now. They're in system testing in that. And so what we are having to do now is across all three systems, run a report, marry those up and make sure that they are correct and make sure that, so that is where the complexity of, there were 5 separate system pools to pull this data, and none of the 5 married up exactly. And so that's where there's been some pretty amazing work to get to where we are today in presenting the data. All of this is going to stabilize as the system gets completed. It's just a work in progress. So
Shannon, for me, I'd like to expound on the question of Chairman Martin. Next week, I would like to know in those vacancies, the total amount that comes out of that, the total amount for the increases, for the vacancies. Let me be more specific. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I actually,
and that's for the
I do have that total. I just don't have that with me.
Yeah,
right now.
I would like to know that, and then the detention officers, and then the other officers as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I think I want to mention too is law enforcement detention were actually included in the study that, we studied all the employees in the spring. They were including that. What we did not see in there was the pressure on the salaries there. That there were really no recommendations bubbling up out of that for these positions, really, because we just weren't seeing that pressure on it. We knew jurisdictions were being extremely aggressive. I mean, we know the city, we were about $4,000 ahead on starting salary with the city of Winston in terms of law enforcement officers. They leapfrog us, and the recommendation you've got in front of you actually is still a little bit shy of where the city of Winston is. And so, and we thought, okay, well, maybe those were unusual, and that wasn't happening everywhere. What we saw as the budgets got approved by jurisdictions is that everybody was having to move most everybody was having to move pretty aggressively.
Drastic change.
Very interesting market change. And normally we do our study, we make recommendations and bring them to you, and the implications of the budget year where we all do things, we don't go back and take a look. This was a pretty unusual thing we did this year because we actually, after the budget year, we knew the marketplace had changed so much. We went back and studied it post local government budgets getting approved.
The consultants didn't pick that up in this survey. Is that what you're saying?
They didn't have it to pick up when we did the study last spring because the jurisdictions had not made those adjustments yet.
Okay.
We knew that there was pressure. To be honest with you, I think we were all surprised when we saw the jurisdictions that we compete with.
Is this the only department that's possibly happening in?
It always happens a little bit, but to this degree is really unusual.
Okay.
Normally, we are a great employer, and so we do not have to. If you are a terrible employer, you got to pay more than everybody else to keep anybody. We are a great employer, and a lot of strong board support for the people that do this work, and so we've got a lot of other good things going for us, but we do have to be competitive. And so normally, you can jockey a little bit as you go through. This was unusual. This was really unusual. So
Okay.
we do have some recommendations in terms of funding it, and so kind of continues through the cost, after the cost considerations really is manager's recommendations.
Right. So there's 1.2 million that was carried over from the July 1st pay plan implementation, and that's available, to use for this purpose. This leaves $2.6 million in shortfall to fully implement the law enforcement and detention series market adjustments. Implementation effective October 28 will reduce the cost for fiscal year 2024 by just over $1 million and leaves a shortfall of approximately or estimated $1.55 million. So other options to offset the cost is elimination of detention positions, and this slide shows an example of the impact of what eliminating positions would have on the cost of implementation. So for instance, 8 detention officer vacant positions would equate to $519, or you might as well say $520,000. On up to 16 positions, just over $1 million.
And we have 111 vacant positions at the moment.
Yes,
in
sir.
the detention group. Okay, thank you.
Have we had any discussion with the sheriff about this?
I believe Chantel has talked with the sheriff.
I have spoken with the sheriff, and he is okay with eliminating some positions.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
So this slide just shows the county manager's recommendation. The county manager does recommend implementing the pay plan effective October 28th and eliminating 8 detention officer 1 positions for a cost of $520,000. And this recognizes, that there will be a property tax impact in fiscal year 25. And that's, of about 47 cents. And that also assumes the eliminated positions would continue through fiscal year 25. Also assuming that other revenue and expenditure considerations would remain static.
Yeah, so you are essentially, will create a financial pressure going into next year's budget. Now, will revenue and expenditures remain static? No, there'll be other cost drivers on the expenditure side, up and down. They're going to be, we have enjoyed through this great revenue growth that is not, I do not believe is going to continue. I don't think the sales tax revenue growth that we've seen is going to continue as aggressively as it has. We just got our last sales tax disbursement, which was for June 30th. And so, where we are there is for a couple of years, our budget in the new year was actually lower than what we received in the prior year. This year, our budget is a little higher than what we actually received. So it really has kind of normalized a bit. But I do think we're in a good revenue place. I do think we've seen good property tax receipts that have continued, some of the best, frankly, historically, we've ever had. And then obviously you've got a reval year that's coming in 2026. So, this recommendation is solid from is your current budget balanced if you do this? I do think there's going to be some PAYGO funds that are available. So when you're appropriating fund balance, you're essentially recognizing that will be the first thing that comes out of any PAYGO calculations that we have. Of course, we haven't closed out the year yet, but I think we'll be okay. And this does take the lower level reduction in detention officer positions. We do rely and have budgeted through the P&G, the security contract at the jail, that we're paying for that with lap salaries, with vacant salaries as well. And so there's a little bit of room there to wiggle, but it, what this essentially does is it'll just create some pressure on next year's budget, and but it keeps our current budget, honestly in balance, and that's kind of where we need to be.
I had a question about the differential in the recommendation. You're recommending a 3-grade bump for the sheriff's deputies, and a 2-grade bump, as I understand it, for the detention officers. Got that?
Right.
All right. Currently, they're at par for the minimum salary.
Right. So, but that has not always been the case. Actually, in pay plans of past, they have not been the same. In January, when we made the Lockton study, implementation there, that, we moved them to the same at that point based on, Lockton's recommendations.
The reason I ask about that in particular, because we've got almost exactly 4 times as many vacancies in the detention staff as in the general deputy staff. And we hear repeatedly that it's become a safety issue at the jail. I think it's probably pretty clear that it's easier to recruit, as tough as it is. And it's tough. It's still not as difficult to recruit for general law enforcement officers who are going to be out in the community than it is to recruit for detention staff. How much extra would it cost to maintain par?
I mean, you would, so I would say, just ballpark figure, I would say about 5% of what, 2.5 to 5% of the overall total. So
we would need to recalculate and get that number back to you.
Could you bring that in next week? Because I am concerned about safety at the detention center for officers and inmates. And I have been persuaded at this point that addressing that is a priority concern. Thank you.
And if I may, I wanted to expound off of that with Commissioner Bessie. knowing, I think that I read in the newspaper this week that we have 36 murders in Forsyth County, all-time high. So I want to support our sheriff and the collaboration they have with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County, with the Winston-Salem Police Department in terms of support. But we need to start seeing better outcomes. So if this is what we need to do, with that, I want to be able to support it. But again, we need to see the outcomes. We want to just keep supporting something that doesn't have good outcomes in our community. Thank you.
I have a question on the elimination of the 8 detention officers. Those 8, would they be vacant positions now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you bring it, subtract 8 from whatever the total number is, and you drop down to that, then that number is what is thought is needed to operate.
So yes, and that, so if we remove those 8 positions, then that would be $520,000.
Well, no, I'm not, the money's important, but that's not what I'm looking for at the present time. When you go down to the, you're going to take that money and the detention money and put that somewhere else. When you take that number down, minus 8 of what the total number is now, what is that gap between the amount of detention employees that's in place and what that number is it's thought to be? I can't remember the numbers.
Yeah, I think from my perspective in this recommendation is just the reality that that those 8 positions in the midterm, in the next 2 or 3 years, unless something dramatic happens, we won't get back to that kind of normal staffing level. It's going to take some time, and there's lots of efforts underway to try to, determine what needs to be done to get recruitment and staffing where it needs to be. And so, so I think this is really just our acknowledgement. The positions are needed. We desperately need to get staffing at a good level. I mean, they're normal kind of, Shani used to actually, she was the HR person for the sheriff for a long time. And in the old days, you were always going to keep, I don't mean it that way, but there were always going to be 20 vacant positions, right? And so it was just kind of the normal churn, and that was really what was wrapped into our appropriated fund balance reversions sort of category. We have gone way, way too long with too many vacancies, and so the solution is not all money, but from a competitive perspective, this sort of takes that issue kind of out of it. I think I'm answering your question. I think we can take 8. I don't think that's going to be an issue, and that'll help with sort of next year's situation we got. Beyond that,
well, I'm not really questioning the method of what's being considered. Are there improvements being made on the numbers of detention employees than what it's been?
There's some progress. We welcomed 20 new.
The last time that I was here, I think that the vacancies for detention was 116, between 116 and 118. So yes, there has been some progress. It's going to take a while, just like Dudley was saying. It's going to take a while because 111 is a lot of positions down.
If you have, that's just prolonging the issue. I'll just stop.
And I will say, Ms. Hutchins and I are meeting with the sheriff and Major Whitaker and some of their staff tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have some more to share. I see Colonel Gray. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
number is actually 105. We are actively increasing in our recruiting. We're making effort.
Colonel Gray, I have a question. So with what we're doing in terms of the increases, is it probable that you'll start seeing staff get hired and come on in to the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, ma'am. Money is the issue.
Okay, that's what I need.
So with that, we want to do what we can, as far as even if consuming this 16 vacancies, to do what we can.
Have we increased salary before recently? Or bonuses or something?
So yes, there are bonuses for detention, not deputy. So we did, the board did adopt retention and recruitment bonuses. The final retention bonus will be paid out in October, and, the retention bonuses are ongoing.
Shannon, did they receive increases in January?
Pardon me? What did you say?
I asked Shannon, did they receive increases in January?
They did not.
You said the retention bonuses are ongoing?
Well, they're being paid out ongoing. So the board adopted to extend that in the budget process. And so that's actually been extended through December.
Okay, fair enough.
So people who are hired within that time will get payouts
I gotcha.
incrementally.
I just I wanted to just make sure we
Not
had a
ongoing
timeline
forever.
on it. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you all.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, and as we move through the next week, just if you've got ideas, thoughts, ways to structure this that are other suggestions, let me know. All right, we've got a number of budget and finance items, and we'll kind of get on through these. I'll ask the presenters to be pretty efficient in this. Item 7 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, appropriates adoption promotion program incentive funds for social services. Kyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this item is necessary to appropriate funds from it's for the Special Children's Adoption Program in DSS. The 24 adopted budget included funds that we anticipated to be received in 24, but did not include the anticipated carryover funds from 23. And so this amendment appropriates $230,433.02. These funds are restricted to be used solely to promote adoptions in the county. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and I know we've got staff from DSS here as well if you have questions.
Question for Kyle.
We're good. All right, Kyle, why don't you stay there? We're going to kind of be efficient here because we've got a couple of items that are yours so item 10 is a resolution authorizing submission of the fiscal year 2024 budget. It's the Home and Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan.
Right, so this is something we have to do every year, which is request the board to approve the FY24 Home and Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan for older adults to send to North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Aging and Adult Services. The funding plan is attached in your information there, showing the allocations between DSS and Shepherd Center, Financial Pathway, Senior Services, and Support Services of the Forsyth County and TransAid. Something we do pretty much every year.
So I just want to say, I guess it's not really for you, but every year I notice that TransAid, with regards to the transportation, has always had some unused dollars. So I don't know if there's other transportation options that could be allocated or reviewed to approve.
Sure.
Yeah, just
I
if you
know,
can just share my
supports-
thoughts on that.
Sure, we can definitely dig into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Kyle, if I can leave you up there, item 11 is an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget. It's spatial justice contract and public relations.
Right, and so as Shannon indicated, we are in the process of transitioning from our older financial and HR system and our budget system to a new one. The FY24 budget was developed partly with the new system, but really significantly through multiple spreadsheets with each department. And unfortunately, we've identified a few items that were intended to be part of the manager's recommended budget This item is for two items in Public Health's budget, Public Health Department. One is a contract with the School of the Arts Spatial Justice Studio for continued work on their Neighborhood Equity Atlas. And then there were also some funds for Public Health's public relations efforts that they have. And so what we're proposing to do is, if you also remember, at the end of the 24 budget process, there was $738,867 set aside in a budget reserve. That was after alternate service levels had been included and outside agencies had been kind of considered. And so we put funds in a budget reserve really just to balance to have a balanced budget. And so our recommendation is to reduce that budget reserve by $94,600 for these two items in public health. Happy to answer your questions there.
Questions for Kyle?
All right. I'm going to keep jumping around because item 15's Kyle. So you took all your paper up there. It's an amendment to the budget to appropriate fund balance to transfer to the 2016 Caladium Museum Capital Projects Ordinance.
And so this one is actually not related to, this mistake is not related to the finance system that we're in now. This is a mistake on budget's part, where back in 22, the board approved an amendment to transfer $700,000 from the general fund balance to increase the contingency budget for the Caladium project. And the board approved it, but that transfer was never entered into the financial system. And so those funds reverted back into fund balance. We have funds those funds usually are appropriated for PAYGO. We did not appropriate everything that we had available for PAYGO in 22. And so what we're asking to do is really just reappropriate those funds from fund balance to transfer those into the Caladium CPO. Like, it's really it's really a budget correction. So
and that I can speak to it. That is particularly complicated because if you remember, that Caladium budget grew over a long period of time, and the money kind of came from everywhere, and so it was a mishmash of where it was. But it's almost finished, so we'll be moving in it here pretty soon. Any other questions? All right, and item 17 is also Kyle. This 2020 motor vehicle and mobile equipment.
Right, and so as you know, we've always, for the past, 10 or 12 years, we've been setting annual funds aside and transferring them into a CPO for our vehicle replacement costs. That's really an effort to allow funds to roll over from year to year and prevent the need to make purchases, to avoid funds going away. And so as a benefit of our transition to our new financial system, the CFO has established a sub-fund within the general fund that would allow us to manage those funds without actually having to create this CPO every 2 years. And so what we're asking to do here is transfer the funds from the CPO, the remaining funds from the CPO into this sub-fund, and then we'll transfer the funds that are annually appropriated from that in the general fund to that as well. But this is really just moving the existing funds that we already have from the old CPO into the new SIM. So confusing, but that's
should be easier in the new system. It'll be easier.
It'll be less of us having to come every 2 years again to create something brand new. So,
questions for Kyle?
Good. Thank you.
All right. I have a couple of items from Michaela Westbrook of Kyle's staff. So Michaela, come on up. The first one's a resolution ratifying a contract between Forsyth County Department of Public Safety and Exchange Club Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse for youth intensive intervention services.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. So this first item is for the Exchange, or what used to be called the Exchange Club, now Parenting Path. They applied with the state and were granted $34,000 for intensive intervention funds, and those will just be pass-through funds. And so there's also an ordinance to amend the budget for those dollars. Any questions?
All right. If not, item 9 is also Michaela's. It's a resolution ratifying a contract between Forsyth County, North Carolina Department of Public Safety and Youth Collaborative for youth intensive.
All right, so this is the same situation, Project X, which they've gotten these dollars for a number of years now. They were granted $63,611 from the state. There's also an ordinance amendment for that item as well. Any questions?
Question from Michaela.
All right, thank you, Michaela. All right, Nicole Pretty's got a couple of items, so I'll ask her to come up. Item 12 is hers. Hey, Nicole, it's an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget, appropriates $162,981 for public health programs. So, Nicole.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This money, $162,981, is additional funding received from Department of Health and Human Services that goes to Department of Public Health's WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children, specifically to support their breastfeeding education.
Any questions for Nicole?
All right, thank you. Item 13 is hers. It's an amendment to the 24 budget. I'll let her talk about it.
Actually, I'm going to turn that over to Joshua.
Okay, very good. It is for ELC, Enhancing Detection Activities.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. This is item number 13. This is addition to the budget ordinance. This is basically carryover of COVID funds, $2.6 million from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. We have until May of 2024 to use it. Any questions?
Yeah, what's ELC?
You beat me to it.
Enhancing, I would have to double check on that. That's basically for enhancing detection activities, but I do not I can get the ELC, that exact acronym for you.
Having trouble with that. Okay, I see you are too. Gotcha.
Here we go. All right. Agenda item 14 is Sharita Sutton, I believe, is going to review that. It's an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget to appropriate $3,858 from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services for Nurse Family Partnership. So, Sharita.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Nurse Family Partnership have received additional funds from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $3,858, and we're requesting that the funds be appropriated in the budget for the required state training that the Nurse Family Partnership is requesting.
Questions? Good.
All right, thanks, Sharita.
Thank you.
All right, item 16 is Ms. Kimberly Bussey. She's going to come back up and she's going to talk about an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget for the Sheriff's Department for the Women's Behavioral Health Unit Pilot Project.
Hello again, Commissioners. This item is an amendment to the FY24 budget to use budget reserve funds to increase the appropriation in the Sheriff's Office for the Women's Behavioral Health Unit. The money was included, or the revenue was included in the FY24 budget this fiscal year, but the expenditure in the Sheriff's Office was not. And this item will, again, use those budget reserve dollars that Kyle mentioned earlier to make that happen. This is a contract amendment from NAFCARE that will be doing this work in the Women's Behavioral Health Unit. It's ready to go. We just need this amendment. It's here for your approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Is this the same program that the men are involved in now?
It sure is. This is a pilot program for that. That's right.
It's not exact. They will not have the separate dorm like the men because of space, but they are doing a lot more programming for the women with these dollars, and it's behavioral health dollars.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you stay there, Kimberly, and do item 20, which is an amendment to the budget? It's under grants, but it was...
Dudley, can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It seems like the sheriff's office is inadvertently left out a lot of the budget. So has something going on that we weren't privy to or you didn't get information about?
This item was a little bit different in that the revenue is behavioral health dollars, and so the money was approved by you all May 4th long ago when the behavioral health budget was being established. It was just a miss on my part for the actual expenditure to be put in this FY24 budget. So this kind of tidies that up, unfortunately.
All right.
Yeah, this is the budget cleanup session where grace and mercy is greatly appreciated, as we are moving into the system. We did. Now we're cleaning it up. So, and it will be better with this new system. I pray. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. So item 20 is an amendment to the 24 budget for medication-assisted treatment.
That's right. And so this item was appropriated in the FY23 budget. This is for the medicated assisted treatment grant received by the Sheriff's Office. The money was received in June, but it did not roll over in the budget as a project as intended, given the new system. So this item reappropriates it in fiscal year 24. Any questions on that one?
All right, thanks, Kimberly. All right, and one last, I think I've gotten I've jumped around a bunch, but item 18 is the last budget ordinance amendment. It's an adoption of the 2024 Housing Grant Projects Ordinance. Ashley Pendley with the Department of Community and Economic Development will review.
Good afternoon. This item is establishing the 2024 Housing Grants Project Ordinance for Community and Economic Development. This is so that we can continue to provide housing rehabilitation and first-time homebuyer down payment assistance. The revenues available for these projects are made up of the 2023 Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Housing Consortium allocation, revenues from participating municipalities, a transfer from the general fund, and our recent allocation and award from North Carolina Housing Finance Agency Urgent Repair Program, which comes to a total of $491,905. And that transfer from the general fund will be broken up into our Winston-Salem home local match allocation and split between Forsyth County's local match as well. So it's just split right down the middle so that everything is balanced between revenues and expenditures. Any questions?
Questions for Ashley?
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. All righty. All right, so we'll jump into the final, finish out the grants. Item 19 is Kyle Haney. He's going to talk about a resolution of grant funding and interlocal agreement with the City of Winston-Salem.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item before you is an interlocal agreement between the City of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County for the county to conduct a housing rehab program and first-time homebuyers program in the city limits of Winston-Salem. Ashley just came up and talked about the grants that we have where we perform housing rehab as well as provide down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers. There's a number of different funding sources, but generally those are restricted to happening outside the city of Winston-Salem as well as the town of Walkertown as they didn't participate in the program. The city of Winston-Salem has some of those funds as well. They have been recently reviewing their housing programs and have requested that the county actually start doing housing rehab within the city limits. Just as a factor of how they had been operating those programs, they knew that the county's program was operating efficiently and asked if we would come in and provide those services. So the interlocal agreement would provide $1.5 million for the county to be able to provide those housing rehabilitation services within the city limits. It would pay for both that, as well as down payment assistance within the city limits. We're actually already operating the first-time homebuyers program within the city limits. We just have to go to the city of Winston-Salem to get a check for closing. This would actually provide us the funding that we could do it on the front end. The money is split up $1,050,000 for project costs for those housing rehabilitation projects, as well as first-time homebuyers down payment assistance. The remaining money, the $450,000, would go to administrative costs. So we estimated that we would need 2 new positions to be able to actually run this program. The city of Winston-Salem would be paying for those positions. This grant would pay for those for 3 years. So this is somewhat of a pilot. I think the anticipation is that if everything goes well, they would put more money into this. But it really is kind of moving that housing rehab away from the city and the county to just the county operating that, as well as the first-time home buyer. I think it would improve the citizens' access to that, as well as now they're having to call 2 different agencies depending on where they live. And then the housing GPO that was just that you just briefed on, this would modify that after you voted for it to add this into that as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, Kyle, you're to be commended for doing such a good job that the city wants you to do the same thing for them, except they would do the funding. Thank you. That's a great compliment.
When we went over this item during the budget year, it was inherently confusing that there were 2 places that someone could apply for assistance if they lived in the city. This makes a lot more sense. Good.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. So one more grant item. It's item 21. It's an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget to appropriate funds from the Appalachian District Health Department. Nicole Pretty will review this, and I'm probably going to hit you up on the other ones you have. So.
Yep. Hello again. This amendment appropriates $99,755 of grant funds, not just to our Public Health Department's environmental health program, but also across the Department of Public Health for water fountains, mental health first aid, certification, and some de-escalation training for our staff. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Nicole. And item 23 is yours. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Hologic Sales and Service.
Yes, so this contract will support the current molecular testing equipment that our Public Health Department laboratory uses to provide testing for the clinic services that we provide to the community, including sexually transmitted diseases and COVID-19.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
I noticed in reading materials that basically there's the same, is this not a competitive arena? I mean, aren't there multiple people who make this equipment and so forth, and is that something we ought to be bidding and taking a look at?
So there is one other comparable piece of equipment on the market. At the time that this contract originated, that piece of equipment was not currently FDA approved, so I think that was a driving force to go with the Hologic Panther equipment. We have this equipment already in our laboratory and are using it. We did reach out to Abbott, is the maker of the other, I think it's called Affinity, something like that. And they just got their final FDA approval for some of the testing that we were already doing. They just got that in August, so last month. And with Abbott, they have, with them, we would have to purchase the actual machine, and there's a large upfront cost to that, a little bit higher than $300,000, in addition to the cost of purchasing reagents to use with that machine.
In the long haul, is it more cost efficient to do, assuming it's equal in its performance?
I think it's definitely something to look at in the upcoming fiscal year. But again, when we were looking at this contract, they did not have FDA approval to run all of the tests that we were currently doing with the system we have in place now.
So this is an annual, so it could be done next year?
Correct.
Looked at, project out the upfront cost is worth it because it saves in the long run?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And item 25 is yours as well. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of agreement for mammography screening and diagnostic services.
I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Pleasant.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this item is a contract between the Forsyth County Department of Public Health and Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center. And this contract helps support the mammography services, screening services for our BSEP patients. And the BSEP program is our breast and cervical cancer screening program. In the tips, because we can't provide these services on site, so we refer the patients out for mammograms for this program.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, so I'm jumping around, trying to make this fairly efficient. Item 22 is Denise Price, and she is going to review this resolution authorizing participation in the Carolina Across 100s, our state, our well-being program.
Good afternoon. Carolina Access 100 is an NC Impact initiative at the UNC School of Government. It's a 5-year initiative where they partner with cohorts across the community to address complex issues. This particular cohort is going to include 15 communities that will gather together to develop strategies, increase alignment of community resources for suicide prevention and behavioral health. We were attracted to this particular initiative because it aligns very nicely with work that's already existing. Some of that Jackie Copeland addressed during his quarterly update, like the community conversation on suicide. So it will include us being in the community and gathering stakeholders to make sure that we're getting maximum impact. This resolution does authorize participation and also the execution of necessary documents, which could include up to $20,000 in revenue for reimbursement of project management time to lead the initiative, for travel to meetings with the other 14 communities, and for project implementation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Denise.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Denise. Agenda item 24 is Joshua Swift. It's a resolution authorizing the purchase of COVID-19 vaccines, as he talked about in his earlier presentation.
Yes, nothing really further to add. This is authorizing $750,000 from our COVID federal funds that's passed through the state to use to purchase the vaccine. Any questions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Item 26 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Vanguard Professional Staffing Incorporated for the purpose of providing merit-based temporary staff for food. All right, and...
Good afternoon.
Yep.
The total ARPA funding to support the training and workload demands of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the Food Nutrition Program known as SNAP, was $298,018, and the appropriation was approved by the board on September 22nd of 2022. The original Vanguard Professional Staffing Food and Nutrition Services contract for fiscal year 2023 and 24 was a not-to-exceed amount of $100,000 and was approved by the board on October 27th of 2022. Total expenses to support the food nutrition services training and workload demands during fiscal year 23 were $72,396 for the period of November through June 30th, 2023. Fiscal year 23 rollover funds in the amount of $27,604 combined with an amendment increase of $100,000 would allow funding for FNS eligibility temporary staffing through June of 2024. Because of greater needs, volume escalation, and continued shortage of experienced FNS staff qualified to determine program eligibility, Department of Social Services seeks to amend the agreement with Vanguard for merit-based temporary staff by increasing funding an additional $100,000. Full compensation for the provider's services with an approved amendment is not to exceed $200,000 during the term of the agreement, which ends June 30th, 2024. The billable rates remain the same as fiscal year 2023. This is a sole source agreement and consists of 100% federal ARPA grant funding, so there's no county funds involved. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So when the ARPA funds are gone,
Yes, sir.
do we foresee this contracting service work continuing?
They're currently recruiting. They have 7 vacancies at this point. And I think what has happened most recently was June 30th, all the public health emergency waivers came to an end. And therefore, with the emergency interview waiver being lifted, it's increased the number of required interviews. So I think we've we're going up a plateau, and because of the additional food nutrition funds during COVID that were being paid out, a lot of that is going to end with these waivers being lifted. So going forward, I think that the need will level out, but it's kind of an in-between period. First we had COVID, and the ARPA funds were given to us, and we needed additional help. Things lined out a bit, and now that they're lifting all of the waivers, we've increased volume-wise significantly. When they get through all of these applications and recertifications, I think things will line out by June of 2024 where we don't have to continue to pursue merit-based temporary staffing.
That's good. Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you. All right, agenda item 27 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 22 additional GIS licenses. Shaylee Bowen with Map Forsyth will review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, since 2005, countywide Geographic Information Services has been supported through sole source vendor Environmental Research Systems Institute, otherwise known as ESRI. ESRI is currently the only company providing an enterprise GIS system, which includes both a desktop and an online environment. Leveraging Esri software, Map Forsyth administrates desktop, server, and online resources for 45 county and city departments, as well as Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, community nonprofits, and the citizens of Forsyth County. This software is critical for county addressing, the 911 CAD system, school crisis mapping, and tax revenue collection. Through Esri's cloud environment, Map Forsyth is currently hosting 417 web applications as well as 42 dashboards, most of which support HHS. Today, Map Forsyth is requesting the purchase of 22 licenses, including 7 desktop and 15 online licenses, to support the Tax Administration Department in migrating from ARC Desktop to ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro is Esri's new desktop software. Until now, Map Forsyth staff and the GIS team and tax were sharing licenses to reduce costs. However, that is no longer an option as Esri is sunsetting their ArcGIS desktop on March 1st, 2026, and so the tax team need time to get trained on the new environment. The total cost of the 22 licenses is $89,400. Pricing for all Esri licenses is derived from the state contract, which provides a significant discount. For this request, the discount is $17,185. Alongside the purchase of the new licenses, we are requesting entrance into a 3-year term contract with Esri. This contract will replace the automatic annual renewal agreement that was previously in place. Over the 3-year term of the contract, the price will not exceed $323,500. This includes the costs associated with the license being purchased, as well as ongoing maintenance and support for the additional 158 licenses that we already have. So to clarify, the cost is for 180 licenses in total that support our department and the other GIS staff within the county. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Got one. You mentioned there are no competitors that offer both online and desktop access, correct?
So they do an enterprise system. They're interesting in the fact that they do their online, their desktop, and their server, and all 3 of those connect. So there was no competitor that I could get a bid from.
So are there competitors that offer something less than that?
Less
Like
than.
online only or something, I don't know.
Less than, but what is strange about their competitors is they still leverage Esri in the background. So really, you're still paying for an Esri product.
Are they cheaper?
Cheaper, depends.
I mean, there could be a better mousetrap that is put on top of another mousetrap.
Correct. However, what you get with Esri over these other companies is that you're going to get the support, but also you're not going to have to build your infrastructure in-house to support all of this. Esri does a lot of this on their own infrastructure. So we wouldn't have to keep adding servers and backup environments and customizations for us, which also add to the cost of these other products.
Yeah, the real competitor to them is open source stuff, and so because there is some open source GIS stuff that's just go get it, and we already use a fair amount of open source. Really, we use a ton of open source stuff, and so it's better than the best is free, right? But Esri really has been the dominant GIS. I mean, all the magic that you see these guys do, it's Esri based at the end of the day.
Open source also has its pitfalls. We've seen counties where they went 100% open source, but then their expert leaves and their GIS infrastructure just completely collapsed if you don't have that support.
It's a weird environment.
Yes, so we do it for cost savings as we can see fit.
Yeah, what really happened is Esri has, as a company, tightened down how their licenses are used, and over time, the net impact of that's going to be folks are going to migrate to some other things. And Shelley's done a great job at minimizing what this could have been, because it was a big budget driver coming into this year. But because we also want to be legal with our license. I mean, that's the other factor, that you want to make sure that you, from an honesty perspective, that you're not using something you shouldn't be using, and you're not buying something you're not using, I guess, is the other point of that. It's tricky.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah.
Got it.
Are there any other questions?
Thanks, Shayla. Item 28 is a resolution awarding a purchase of a special weapons and tactics or SWAT team support vehicle to Matthews Specialty Vehicles Incorporated. Mr. Sammy Petticourt's going to come up from the Sheriff's Department's going to review this. So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sammy Petticourt, Captain with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. I'm also the SWAT team commander. We had asked to budget $175,000 for the SWAT van. This van particularly was going to be used in addition to our Armored Bearcat. There's some operations that we do with the Joint Task Force, the Drug Task Force for Forsyth County, that limits our use of the Bearcat due to basically just being spotted. Not to go in to tactics real heavy, but we have to be able to keep that covert option there. So the budget, like I said, we would ask for $175,000. The bid went out. 3 bids were returned. 2 of them were not done properly. The winning bid was Matthews Specialty Vehicles in Greensboro, and it came out to be $175,093. So it's $93 over.
And this is federal forfeiture money.
Yes, coming out of federal forfeiture money.
It's not.
What's the capacity of the?
The van will be able to put 2 up front and 8 in the back.
I was looking at the pictures.
Yes. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right, thank you all.
All right, Stephen Brenniger is going to come up from Fleet and talk about 2 items. Item 29, which is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract for the purchase of equipment to upfit the Dodge Chargers. And then item 30 is the installation of the equipment on the public safety vehicle. So, Stephen, have at it.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to come up here today. Like I said, we bought 28 Dodge Charger pursuit vehicles that require installation of various equipment for the function of their intended purposes. I spoke with the Sheriff's Office to determine what kind of equipment they needed and how much equipment they needed. The list of equipment includes light bars, brush guards, sirens, siren speakers, light heads, and various brackets. Upon reviewing the list of equipment, it was recommended that the contract be awarded to Dana Safety Supply for a total not to exceed $104,217.16. The equipment is special pricing set by the North Carolina State Contract 680D, which is basically a big discount on every manufacturer. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Good.
All right, next item is the General Services Department needs the services of vehicle upfitters to install all this equipment we are getting ready to order. Lost my place here, sorry. On the public safety equipment, safety department vehicles include the Dodge pickup trucks, Dodge Chargers, Dodge Durangos, and Ford Interceptors. Each vehicle requires an installation of certain upfit equipment to function for their intended purposes. I met with the Sheriff's Office on that, just to determine what kind of equipment they need to install, so I can, when I did the bid, we'd know everything. And each upfitter could understand exactly what was being installed and where it needs to go. Also, we bid out equipment for the installation of services to be installed for each vehicle during the outfits is light bars, push bars, sirens, siren speakers, light heads, various brackets, also kennel packs. I think we have 2 Dodge Durangos in there for kennel packs and hot pot. And there's few other pieces of equipment that the Sheriff's Office owns, and that like the gun locks. Some of that stuff they'll install 800 radios. We will 800 radios we will pull out of the deadline cars, and repurpose those. And that's all I got on that one there. Any questions on that?
Any questions for Stephen?
Just to verify, so you bid it and the low bidder was
Was that RCS Communications?
RCS, right, at the 70,001, and then you did the cost takeoff from that. So thank you, Steve.
Sorry,
Appreciate it.
it wasn't lifted off my paper here.
You're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're rolling into it. Property matters. Kirby actually had to be away from a personal matter, and so you got to have that great Kirby voice. Damon's going to come up and talk to you about 2 easements. And if you got real questions, next Thursday Kirby can give you the detailed stuff. But
thank you, Mr. Manager. So this item is, the next 2 items actually are easements. This one's a resolution authorizing an easement to Duke Energy for the north side of the county's property at 755 Highland Avenue. So here is the public health building, DSS building, Highland Avenue, the entrance to the property. North of that, where you see the dotted lines, approximately 280 feet, 375 feet, so about 655 feet total of underground utilities that Duke Energy is going to install. And it's basically, if it's underground, it's going to be 20 foot, so 10-foot easement on either side of where they install the utility. So they're really just asking us for the ability to put that underground.
all right. And the next one.
Yeah, the next item is another grant of a utility easement to Duke Energy, and it's for our property at the new Blues Lake Park. Let's make it a little bigger for you. So off of Craig Road, can't see it really well on here, but the entrance to the park is in this area here. So these white dots, the ones that are closest to the road, are where the existing utilities are. And so Duke is going to move them back from approximately 25 to 50 feet. They're going to move their line back so that we can put in a turn lane that accesses from Craig Road into the park. They're having to move the utilities back 25 to 50 feet. And so they're requesting an easement to do that. Similar to the other, if it's underground, then the easement is 10 foot on either side of the utility, and then above ground is 30 foot, so it's 15 feet either side above the above ground line. And that's the 2 utility items.
All right.
All right.
You good?
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, so that wraps things up. The appointments, they closed yesterday, or they closed?
Appointments closed on September the 11th.
Okay, and so you've got that as they are, and then you've got a fuel surcharge franchise report for that period. And so the only other item I have, Mr. Chairman, is just a closed session motion.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, could I need to share 2 things with the board. I think you all would really want to know it. I have permission from Commissioner Bessie to share this tonight on Wheel of Fortune. Commissioner Bessie's stepdaughter will be a contestant, Ariana Brothers. So all of us have to watch Wheel of Fortune because Commissioner Bessie is sworn to secrecy and he cannot share the results. And also,
Bought a new car or something?
let's all wish Ashley a happy birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday to you. Okay.
And I believe it's your birthday coming up too,
Yes,
Vice
ma'am.
Chair Wizenhut.
Yes, ma'am. Vice Chair Wizenhut's birthday is on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. We're both Virgos. That explains a lot.
All right, ready for closed session motion?
Yep.
Okay. Need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss 3 matters: to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee pursuant to provisions of North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A6. And since there's no other business to come before the board at this meeting, following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned.
I'll make that motion.
By a second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.